9 days until the midterms. Not that we're counting around here, but you'd think with that being the case, Republicans would be out there campaigning on the strong economy we were discussing there. New York Times front page story, though, today suggests GOP candidates are kind of quiet about tax cuts when they get out on the campaign trail. Independent Women's Forum senior policy analyst Patrice Lee Onwuka joins us. Talk a little bit about this. Patrice, good to see you. Just logically, you would think 4% growth. Here we go. The president, obviously, as you would think he would, is bragging about that and should be. But if you do read the Times article or just listen to candidates who are running in primaries and what have you, it's usually other issues that come up in these Republican candidates. They go after the Democrats, on trade or immigration or being close to Nancy Pelosi or whatever it may be. But they're not out bragging as much. Some are, but not out bragging as much about these tax cuts. What do you make of that?
I mean, it could be strategic. They're considering their constituency and what's really moving the needle. Whether those folks in their districts feel like they've really reaped the benefits of the tax cuts, but also what's more important to them. And I think we see when we consider the types of conservative or right of center voters, you've got those who are Trump supporters who are all for the America First agenda, and those who are more traditional conservatives and Republicans who may be more on the economic, who are more concerned about the tax cuts and the impact of growth, whereas Trump supporters are probably concerned about those wedge issues like immigration and the trade and tariffs. So, we'll have to see. But I think they're thinking about their constituents and what is going to resonate with those folks.
It's probably a fair point. I mean, I've seen analysis of the midterms breaking up the Republicans into a few different baskets of Republicans, the type of Republicans that you're dealing with, whether it be the evangelicals who say they're happy with the judges that the president is appointing. These economic nationalists, I think that was Steve Bannon's term, but those types of voters that you talk about, that's where trade and immigration play a large role. But you would think those two groups will be for the president for the issues that I mentioned. But the third group is kind of the traditional Republican. Now, he's very popular in the party, 90% popularity in the party. But that's the group that would care, right? That's the group that would care about tax cuts and deregulation. So you're saying it depends on which state you're in, whether you make that argument.
Absolutely. All politics are local. And I think, when we look at some of the past elections, and particularly in the primaries, what resonated really depended on the types of voters. I mean, it was interesting even last year to see how in Virginia, the Republican candidate, tried to do tax the Trump agenda without using Trump's name. But what's interesting is that Pew is finding, President Trump is actually he's more favorable or helps Republicans more than even President Obama's name helped Democrats in the past two congressional races. So it's going to be like who's willing to really embrace the Trump agenda and the Trump name versus others. And again, it comes down to those local races and what's important for your constituents on the ground.
I think that'll be fascinating to look at right in the fall, because you will see, and your example is a good one. That will happen sometimes. I think not all the time. I mean, sometimes I think about Pennsylvania, right? There's Pennsylvania 18 where they had the special election, and I went out to cover that. And the candidate who was running on the Republican side there said, I was Trump before Trump. Nobody's more Trump than me. And it turned out the local voters identified more with the Democrat, in this case Conor Lamb, and said, "Oh, this guy. He comes from a union family. He's our kind of guy." And they went with him individually. So the fact that the president is going to be out aggressively campaigning in the fall, he is popular in the party, but he's not on the ballot, right? So I wonder how that'll play out.
Well, and when we talk about constituents, we have to think about their educational background. Are they educated as in college graduates, or are they, high school graduates? And I think there's a distinction there between who supports Trump and who doesn't in those groups. When you look at race, that also plays an issue. When you look at, even the age demographic, I think that plays a role. So if you know your district and you know it well, then you know what's going to resonate based on the types of people that you have working. If you have people who are former factory workers, for example, who are out of work, they may see the Trump agenda as really strong and important, whereas those who are college educated grads who have cushy Silicon Valley jobs, they're probably not going to view the Republican candidates and the Trump agenda as favorable in their eyes. All
right, as you said, all politics is local, so thanks Tip O'Neill for that, and thank you Patrice for coming on. We appreciate it. Patrice Lee Onwuka with some good analysis there as we get set for the midterms. Again, 99 days from now, apparently.